Council. Ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding to receive the worship of the Mayor of Burnley, Councillor Paul Reynolds. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Please be seated. I would like to welcome members to this our Budget Council meeting. Can I ask everyone present not to talk amongst themselves during the meeting, as this can be very distracting for others who are listening to the debate. Can I also ask everyone to ensure any mobile devices are switched to silent and do not cause a distraction during the meeting. I would like to remind members that where they are able to, they are required to stand when addressing the meeting. Please ensure that you are seated in the seat allocated to you on the seating plan, so that when you speak, your name is correctly displayed on the live stream and the camera is trained on you. You will be aware of the work progressing on Manchester Road and specifically to the pavement outside the town hall. We aren't expecting a fire alarm tonight, but if one should occur, please follow the officers out of the building and assemble to the rear of the town hall. The meeting is being live streamed, and I would like to welcome those watching on the Council's YouTube channel. Please remember that viewers at home are not able to hear you speak if you do not use your microphone. This includes when casting your vote for recorded votes. Finally, let us all remember to treat members of the public, elected members and officers with respect throughout the meeting as set out in the Code of Conduct for members. Before we start the evening formal agenda items, it is with sadness I share the news that former colleague Winston Robinson passed away unexpectedly just over a week ago. A lifelong Burnley fan, Winston completed around 40 years service in local government, the majority of them here in Burnley. He served with dedication, integrity and professionalism and had been much missed since he moved to take on the role of Head of Engineering at Ribble Valley 2 years ago. Our thoughts are with Winston's family, friends and all those who knew him during the difficult times. Can I please ask members to stand to join me in a minute's silence in memory of Winston. Thank you, members and guests. We will now move on to the business of the evening. Item 1 on the agenda, minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of February 2026. I will move those meetings. Mr Deputy Mayor, will you second those meetings?
I second these minutes.
All those in favour, please say aye. Those minutes are approved. Item 2 on the agenda, declarations of interest. All members have been granted a general dispensation to allow them to participate in the debate and vote on the settling of members' allowances at 5D and the setting of the budget and council tax at agenda item 5L. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is item 5G and it's an other interest, non-prejudicial, as I'm Burnley Leisure and Culture Trustee.
Any other declarations of interest? Councillor Margaret Lishman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's other interest, non-prejudicial 5G, Revenue Budget 26-27, as a trustee of Burnley, Pendle and Rossendale CVS and also of Lancashire Women.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's again other interest, non-prejudicial for 5G and J, related to the revenue and capital budgets. Because I'm a trustee and a member of a number of organisations, including Burnley Youth Theatre, Burnley FC in the Community, Building Bridges Burnley, and then as part of my role as leader, as part of the Town Board and Barnfield JV. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because we have seen that members' interests can sometimes get sensationalised, and the budget, revenue budget and capital budget sometimes, in some way, shape or form, will touch some of these organisations. So I just want to make it clear, but it's to avoid, although these are matters that are on the public record, I just want to make it clear that these are non-prejudicial. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Inkle.
Thank you. I'm on the board of trustees at Burnley Leisure, the same as Councillor Hurt.
Councillor McCall. Councillor Carl.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Other interest, non-prejudicial for 5G and J for revenue and capital budget 2026 to 27. And I am the member of Burnley Town Board and the Housing Joint Venture. Also, just to let anybody know who's interested in looking at my registered interests, I've been put back on the Growth Lancashire, so I'm back on that as well, just for your information. Thank you.
Councillor McGowan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a other non-prejudicial interest, just as on item 5G and J on the revenue and capital budget, just as an opposition member on Burnley's Town Board. Thank you.
Executive should have said.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know officers aren't required to declare interest, but there's an item on the capital budget, 5J. I'm a director, not remunerated, on the Education Partnership Trust, and Burnley High School is one of the schools within that trust. Thank you.
Item 3 on the agenda, May's communications. The May Civic Ball will take place on the 26th of April 2026 at Townley Hall between 5 and 10 p.m. Booking forms are available on the display cabinets outside the chamber. Please take one and book your tickets. Item 4 on the agenda, public question time.
None have been received, Mr. Mayor.
Item 5 on the agenda, items for decision by the council. Can I remind members that items for decision by council are treated as motions? Therefore, once the proposal has been moved and seconded, members may speak once and for a maximum of 5 minutes. Members may then only speak again on an amendment. Where appropriate, the relevant extract from the minutes of the meeting of the executive held on the 25th of February is included in the supplement agenda pack, along with the council tax resolution and the report of the Chief Finance Officer. The minutes at tracks highlight recommendations to council in bold text. Before we start the debate on the 2026-27 budget, there are 4 items of business to consider first. These are item 5A to 5D, and I will take these individually. We will then proceed to the budget for 2026-27. These are items 5E to 5J, and I will take these en bloc. Budget amendments proposals have been published as a supplement. I would like to remind members that a recorded vote is required to be taken on the budget and on any amendment made to it. We will then consider 5K. So item agenda 5A, Revenue Monitoring Budget, Quarter 3, 2025-26 to 31st December 2025. Councillor Morgan-Lishman, will you move the report recommendations?
Move the report, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Anwar, will you second those?
Second report, Mr Mayor.
Any member? All those in favour, please show. Thank you, that item is carried. Agenda item 5B, Capital Monitoring Report 2025-26, Quarter 3 to the 31st of December 2025. Councillor Morgan-Lishman, will you move your recommendations in the report?
Move the report, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Anwar, will you second those?
Second that report, Mr Mayor.
Any member? All those in favour, please show. Thank you, that item is carried. Agenda item 5C, Treasury Management 2025-26, Quarter 3 to the 31st of December 2025. Councillor Morgan-Lishman, will you move the recommendation in the report?
Move the report, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Anwar, will you second the recommendation?
Second recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Any member? All those in favour, please show. Thank you, the item is carried. Agenda item 5D, Report of the Independent Remuneration Panel. Will any member move a motion in relation to the recommendation of paragraph 2 of the report, namely that Council, having noted the recommendations of the IRP, approve a scheme of members' allowance for 2026-27? Councillor Anwar.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to move, as per the recommendation of the Independent Remuneration Panel, that member allowances stay as they were, as recommended in that report. Thank you.
Second the report, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to put on record that freezing councillors' allowances has got the support of the Conservative group. We've said it, well, I've certainly said it for a couple of years now, and I'm very happy to see that this has been put forward, and I welcome it. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We'll be supporting the recommendation that the Leader of the Council has put forward, but I think it's worth noting that obviously there was some disquiet within the Independent Remuneration Panel about how this council has deviated away from independent recommendations over the last couple of years. I don't think that's a perfect situation that we've got ourselves into, but I just put that on the record. Obviously, where this council is and where we're going to over the next few years, I don't think it's worth causing a big furore over this. But I think in the future, it's always wise that on highly political and contentious issues like members' allowances, that taking due consideration of an independent remuneration panel should always be taken if we possibly can. But we are where we are, and we support the recommendation that's been put forward for this year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
John Whittaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also agree that councillors' allowances should be frozen at the rate that they're at currently. I'd just like to say, from my own personal experience, I prefer them actually to be reduced, but we are where we are, so there we go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Anwer, would you like to elaborate? Or Councillor Hoskett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We too will be supporting the freeze on expenses, not on expenses, on the allowances, sorry. But I have just have to add, I'm disgusted in the hearing the news today about the MPs putting their charges up like they have been up at MP level, up to 110,000. I think it's disgusting. Half the councillors in this chamber don't even claim expenses. And we freeze into allowances. We don't do it for allowance. I don't do it for the allowance anyway. I do it for because it needs doing. And I just find it, MP level, £110,000. The country's on its backside. This disgusts me. Thank you.
Any other member?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, just to come back on that, and I appreciate all members who stood and spoke in support of keeping member allowances as they are. And I think one of the things that we've been clear about, all of us in this chamber, is that the last thing that we ever want to do is actually politicise our member allowances, because it takes away from the work that we do. And what none of us want to be standing here and actually being the people who decide how much it is that we receive in member allowances. None of us want to do that, and we don't want to get involved or politicise that. So I think it's really good that we've got a consensus across the chamber that we'll keep the allowances as they are and take on that recommendation. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
On the motion, all those in favour, please show. The vote is carried. Addendum items 5B to 5J, the budget for 2026 to 27. All these items will be taken together. I shall use my discretion on the 5 minutes rule and allow members to speak for longer within reason. We have received the amendment to the budget from the Conservative group, which has been published as a supplementary agendas. They are available. We have received the amendment to the budget from the Labour and Conservative groups, which have been published as supplementary agendas. They are available on your tablets, or they are printed copies around the chamber this evening. When the budget report has been moved and seconded, I will then invite Councillor McGowan to move their amendment, his amendment. For any motion or amendment debated as part of the budget, a recorded vote is required. The Chief Executive will give the roll call, and members should cast their vote as follows: for, against, or abstain. Councillor Morgan Lishman, will you please move the report and recommendations from the Executive?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Fellow councillors, I always seem to begin by saying how difficult it's been to create a budget for the next municipal year. That's because of the council's limited resources and its allocation from central government. Nevertheless, I am proud of our collective stewardship of the council's finances over the years, which have kept Burnley in a stronger position than the vast majority of local authorities in England. Mr. Mayor, I apologise in advance for the length of this statement. The preparation of the budget is a long and sometimes challenging process, particularly when it is confused by a dithering government. There is a lot to cover. This year has been particularly stressful. The council was told that we would get £650,000 ring-fenced new burdens funding to introduce food waste, and our first draft budget was constructed with that in mind. Then just before Christmas, we were told our provisional financial settlement and discovered that the food waste monies were now included in the overall settlement. As usual, and despite government promises to improve the situation for councils like Burnley, our settlement was lower than that of similar councils. The detail is clear in the medium-term financial strategy, which outlines future years. On Friday, the 6th of February this year, there was coverage in the press regarding a change in the business rate pooling gains and a potential change to the final settlement, which would have cost Burnley to the tune of £700,000. I wrote immediately to our MP, Oliver Ryan, and over the weekend, he and MPs in other affected constituencies lobbied government ministers. I thank him on behalf of the council for his efforts, and I am pleased to report that for this year at least, the threat has been removed and the monies reinstated. At one stage, there was a saving in the costs, as there were to be no local elections in 2026. I'm pleased to report that democracy has prevailed. We will now have elections, and we will also have some additional money specifically to help with the preparations for the new unitary authorities, whatever they may be. Burnley has also had some good news from the recent pension valuation, which has resulted in a surplus being released back to the authority amounting to £900,000 a year, at least until the next revaluation. Turning to the wider picture, inflation has decreased to 3%, but unemployment is continuing to rise, particularly for young people. Our national economy limps along, achieving limited growth, and productivity rates are low compared with other countries. Even more widely, the world is a worrying place, with continuing conflicts arising from Russia's invasion of Ukraine and in Israel, Gaza, the West Bank, and Palestine. President Trump has targeted Venezuela, Iran, and Greenland with direct military force and threats. Over this last weekend, we have been watching the escalation in aggression involving the US, Israel, and Iran, with some involvement by the UK. These actions have a direct effect on world economies, most immediately on oil prices. The chaotic process of US tariffs is deeply threatening to the world economy. These are real challenges for the exporting firms that are a significant part of Burnley's economy. Before I go on to the Executive's proposals for its capital and revenue budgets, I would just like to refer to one more point. There has been uninformed comment on social media about the council's debt. I am not going to detail each element for you. Many councillors here were involved in each of those decisions. But let me be clear to you and everyone watching, the majority of this council's debt is covered and paid back by the schemes that money enabled. Student accommodation for the University of Lancashire, the Pioneer Place development, and the acquisition of Charter Walk Shopping Centre. In each case, the income generated pays off the debt as well as funding improvements and repairs, and the projects are long-term assets in themselves. This council took brave decisions which are paying off to the benefit of our residents and providing better services. As many in local government say, Burnley punches above its weight. The debt is well managed, and I pay particular tribute to our officers in the finance department. This year, we are proposing an increase in the council tax of 1.99%, which again is below the statutory referendum level of 2.99%. For a Band D council tax property, this will increase from the 2025 level of £344.58 to £351.44. That is £6.86 per property, or 13p a week extra. In addition, and following the resolution agreed by the Council on the 24th of September last year, there will be an adjustment through the Council Tax Support Scheme for residents who are terminally ill and in receipt of council tax support, so that they will no longer pay council tax. Burnley's share of the total income from council tax is 14%. Most of the money goes to Lancashire County Council. As I said, Burnley is proposing an increase of 1.99%. That compares with the County Council's increase of 3.8%, the Police and Crime Commissioner's increase of £15, and the Lancashire Combined Fire Authority increase of £5. Both the police and fire precepts have been increased to the maximum allowed. I appreciate that there has been talk of setting a no increase in council tax, and we have given this option serious consideration. However, I remind members that while finding the funds to do this for 1 year is achievable, it would not be just for 1 year, but it would be a continuing burden for future years. Even with a new unitary authority, it would be an increasing burden on Burnley Council taxpayers. For the mathematicians amongst you, it's worth noting that the 1% reduction from the allowable increases in last year, the same this year, and if we were to do it next year, is the same as a 1-year freeze. The difference is in the effect on our capacity for new initiatives each year. In any case, given this government's track record, who's to say with confidence that the reorganisation will hit its timescale? The executive has decided that a much more productive use of the council's available resources is to invest in growth items which will enable officers to tackle the council's areas of services that need help and improvement. Turning to the capital budget, members will note a number of ambitious schemes in addition to the rolling programmes such as playground refurbishment and renewal. Money has been set aside as matched funding for the youth zone, which is part of our plans to improve prospects for young people in Burnley. Money is also set aside for essential works on the mechanics to match heritage lottery funding if we are successful in our application to them. We will create a new full 3G synthetic football pitch at the Prairie Sports Village and carry out other essential work there. And there is also to be a new 3G synthetic football pitch in Habergam. Burnley always has an ambitious capital programme, and I thank officers for their work on this year's programme, and I look forward to the time when these projects are successfully completed. Turning to the revenue budget, I'm going to highlight some of the new initiatives we are proposing. But before I do that, I think it's worth adding a few words about last year's new spending. In this council, we tend to bank past decisions and take them for granted. It is worth stopping for a moment and taking note of the difference made by just one of our decisions last year. Last year, we strengthened our approach to two issues which councillors and residents raise most frequently: fly tipping and dog fouling. To support this, we created 2 additional enforcement roles within Street Scene. I'm pleased to report to fellow councillors that these posts have been successful. Since the summer of 2025, these officers have significantly boosted our enforcement. Increased visibility within neighbourhoods has meant more engagement with residents, gathering intelligence on the doorstep, identifying hotspots and responding quickly. Residents have welcomed clear and accessible points of contact. The results speak for themselves. These 2 officers have taken 59 additional prosecutions to court, 15 relating to dog offences and 14 concerning waste. Their presence has enabled more patrols across parks and green spaces, providing advice and enforcement around public space protection order dog control measures, and they have also helped shape the Executive's additional proposals for cleansing and enforcement in next year's budget. Burnley Council's position is clear. Irresponsible dog ownership and fly tipping have no place in our borough. Next year, we will build on that commitment through more targeted enforcement and the introduction of a responsible dog ownership scheme planned to launch this spring. I would like to place on record my thanks and those of all the councillors to the enforcement team for their dedication and the tangible impact they are making in our communities. I will now turn to some of the proposals for initiatives in next year's budget. We are proposing that the Ward Opportunities Fund will continue in 26-27 after the success of this year's programme, which has enabled councillors to support local initiatives in their wards. There are clean and proud proposals totaling 214,000 to improve street cleaning. I thank Councillor Hussain for his resolution at Council. I think he read the Executive's mind as we were well on with the preparations at that time. There will be a dedicated enforcement-led cleansing crew tackling environmental crime more efficiently and visibly across the borough, with a focused and proactive approach combining enforcement with immediate waste removal in a single visit. There will be more litter pickers on the street, and there will be increased targeting in the worst areas. To support our newly reopened Townley Hall, the part-time volunteer coordinator post will be retained, and in addition, the post of Business Development Officer will be created to focus on developing a robust business plan for the hall to make it more accessible to residents and visitors. Finally, money towards Barden Track will be made available, which is a long overdue development. I hope and believe that councillors will support all these initiatives to help make Burnley an even better, cleaner and more welcoming place in the future. I have talked to council colleagues, including opposition parties, and I thank those that have contributed to the preparation of this budget. In other administrations, this has not been the norm, but my executive colleagues and I believe that drawing ideas and initiatives from others benefits all in Burnley and is a more constructive approach to politics. I would like to thank the Labour group for liaising with me in relation to their proposed budget amendments. The Labour group amendments have been published by the democracy officers. I am happy to include these amendments, namely an increase in the empty homes budget, supporting Padiham residents in crisis, and a growing participation in swimming as part of the 26-27 budget by way of an alteration. In addition, I would like to propose an increase in the budget for empty homes from the 1.625 million as proposed by Labour group to 1.8 million, which represents a 38.5% increase in the said budget to be funded by the sale of individual properties. The S151 officer has agreed that this alteration is viable. Mr. Mayor, fellow councillors, the executive believes that this is a fair and constructive budget. I can assure members that Burnley Council's finances are in good shape, and we will continue to be ambitious in plans to improve and maintain our borough. I beg to move.
As Councillor Lishman has altered her motion and this has been accepted, the meeting... As Councillor Lishman has altered her motion and this has been accepted, the meeting should signify consent without discussion. CPR 14.7. Members, please say aye to show your consent to the alterations. Aye. Thank you. Councillor Anwar, will you second the reports and recommendations from the executive?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will second. I just wanted to say a few words. I did have a long speech planned on this, but then I didn't realise how long Councillor Lishman's speech was, so I'm going to keep this pretty brief. I just want to say thank you very much. I want to thank all of our officers who've been working behind the scenes tirelessly to get to this point where we can get this budget here to yourselves in the chamber. I also want to thank all of the opposition members as well who have been working with the executive, but particularly with Councillor Lishman, and also colleagues as well. I know particularly Councillor Hussain has been involved in sharing some of those ideas. It is a collective effort. It's everybody bringing their ideas forward and so that we can deliver the best that we possibly can for Burnley and for our residents. But as it says, below the recommended amount in terms of council tax rise, we're going to tackle that issue around fly tipping, putting money towards a youth zone, 3G football pitches for the town, investment in that, WAF funding. All of the WAF funding we allocated last time round has been utilised by members, which shows how important it is for members, but also for the community groups and organisations that you support. Extra litter pickers to tackle those issues around cleanliness. And something that I'm actually really passionate about is the investment that we're going to put in to tackle the issue around Bardon Track. That's been crying out for investment for the best part of 20 years. And I'm really, really glad that as part of this budget, and I thank officers, but particularly Councillor Lishman, for bringing this forward so we can get that investment in there. Extra mowers, and again, working together. We might not have all the ideas ourselves, but you know, the stuff around the free swim, additional funding going into tackling that issue around empty homes. And then finally, the other thing that has come in is making sure that we tackle the issue around the food bank in Padiham as well. So lots and lots of things that have gone in there, and I think it's a fantastic budget and will deliver for the council, but particularly for our residents. And as I said, I thank officers and particularly Councillor Lishman and colleagues who have worked with us for that. So I second the report, Mr. Mayor, as altered. Thank you.
Will Councillor Jim McGowan now allowed to move the Conservative Group amendment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm going to start by coming with a different angle than patting ourselves on the back for a council tax increase, regardless of whether it's 1.99%. Because to be honest, the amount of people I speak to who are just sick to death of the culture of taxes increasing in general grows by the day, and I think someone needs to actually give them people a voice. I do think that with my motion, I move the Conservative budget amendment. But I do want to say a few words on it. This is the last significant budget that Burnley Borough Council is going to put forward. From next year, we are told there will be shadow elections to a new authority and Burnley Council is being abolished. So that was in my mind when I started the process this year of looking through Burnley Borough Council's actual budget and where we would go with council tax. Because I started from a position of, I kind of agree with what the executive is saying in terms of the last few years. The budget is in an all right place. It's in a good place in terms of reserves. The debt that we do have is being financed by projects that we've invested in and are paying a return. So with that in mind, I thought to myself, well, is it not right that I approach this budget seeing whether it is possible to freeze council tax for residents at Burnley Borough Council's portion? So I went through the budget because every year we have seen council tax raised, and yes, the 2.99% is what the statutory limit is, but essentially what that's saying is that if we go above 2.99%, we have to ask in a referendum what residents think, and nobody wants to ask what residents think. That's why they keep it under the 2.99%. So to say it's 1.99% and be really happy about it, I just don't think cuts it in a council that has healthy reserves and is being abolished within 2 years. But more important than that is actually the budget itself, because I don't doubt anybody's motives in this place. I actually think that everybody in here gets involved in local politics because they want to do good for their local community. And when it comes to council finances, it's a serious matter. And there is a lot of information in, very complex. The way that it's funded is complex, the way that we spend money is complex, and not everybody has the time to go through every single aspect of this budget. Not many people in this room will have gone through every single aspect of this budget, and I don't say that disrespectfully. I say it is because we are borough councillors on an allowance of about £4,000 a year, most of us with other full-time jobs or businesses, like I run my own business. However, I got into this role because I wanted to make a difference in the lives of the residents I represent. And one of them things is to challenge the culture of taxes constantly rising. So I've been through the budget and the execs come up with a number of good ideas. So the Conservative amendment doesn't actually take out any of the new proposals that the executive's proposing. What it does is it just re-looks at the finances with a fine-tooth comb, and it goes through and sees whether or not we could freeze council tax. That's where it started from. But it goes further than that, and I'll go through it. So, for instance, Townley Hall has always been a jewel in the crown of Burnley. It was donated to the Burnley people back in the early 1900s. Speak to anybody in Burnley, or even wider afield, and they will say it was gifted to the people of Burnley, Townley Hall. I think that we've underutilised that building for decades. I think the idea of a wedding venue at Townley Hall is a perfect idea. It's referenced in these new items. Hiring somebody as a business development officer, a salesperson, essentially, to bring in revenue from Townley Hall is a wise move. You know, I got married a couple of years ago at the Ribble Valley, but Townley Hall would be a brilliant wedding venue if it was set up properly. We could make a lot of money as a council from Townley Hall. So that idea is decent. The problem with it is it's just very unambitious what the exec put in the budget. We spend £52,000 on hiring a salesperson, but in the first year they make nothing. In the second year they bring £12,500 in. I just think that's ridiculous because they should at least be covering their own wage bill. If we're hiring somebody, surely they should be bringing in the value of what we're hiring them for, especially in a sales position. So the first item in our amendment is to say that in the first year, hiring someone for Townley Hall to bring in business should bring in the level of business at this break even. So that's the first thing. That would be £50,000 saved. The second thing, I've looked at this is another thing. I've not just come off this randomly. I've spoken with the head of resources, the Section 151 officer, who says this is feasible. A 0.7% efficiency drive on non-salary cost. That's reasonable, as he says, and that'd bring in another £50,000. You're already on £100,000 saving here. To wipe out the council tax increase of 1.99%, you need 168,000. So the rest, there's a £300 maintenance and repairs bill that we've put in the budget, allocated over the next 3 years. The thing about that is, if the council's closing down, it's funny how we're now saying, oh, well, we'll spend 300,000 on X, Y, and Z on maintenance, etc. When we don't, the exec member's already alluded to it. When will the reorganisation happen? Well, we're being told it's next year. The repairs and maintenance of 300,000, our amendment says that take £150,000 out of that and defer it to next year. So straight away there is 150, 50, 50. You've got £250,000 that we could use to actually do something which residents constantly tell me, which is to reduce council tax. And I think that's a bold move for Burnley Borough Council to take. There is one council in the country that has reduced their council tax, run by the Liberal Democrats in the Midlands. They've reduced it by 5%, and they've done so by using their reserves. Presumably, they know that their council's going as well. However, this proposal that we're putting forward is not just to use reserves. It's to say the execs come with a good idea saying we can commercialise Townley Hall and make good money from weddings there, and therefore that money can be used to reduce council tax for residents. And that's what our proposal is all about. It's an ambitious way to make sure that this council can stand as a leader when it comes to district councils and say, we don't need to increase council tax every year, year on year, because that's the consensus that's grown up. And the idea of, oh, well, the unitary authorities that come in, they're going to be doing... Well, if I'm involved in the unitary authorities when they come in, I won't be pushing for higher council tax, because government spending needs to be pulled back, not increased, because no matter how much we talk of taxation, constantly taxing people, constantly dipping our hands in people's pockets has consequences. It has real-life consequences. And there'll be people watching this that agree with what I'm saying and people who don't agree with what I'm saying. But ultimately, I'm standing up for the people who are just sick to the back teeth of constant tax rises and then politicians or councillors patting themselves on the back because the rise isn't as high as what other places are doing. Our proposal would see a 1% reduction in council tax for the next year, and I hope that all councillors can support it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Neil Moss's head, will you second that?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Any member? Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, welcome this Conservative amendment to enable a 1% reduction in council tax. I want to focus in on one particular area, though, and this is something I've got quite a bit of experience with, and that's the first point that my colleague, Councillor McGowan, focused on, was the business development officer to be employed at Townley Hall. Now, just looking at the figures, and Jamie has alluded to them somewhat earlier, this is an incredibly ultra-cautious income generation figure that's included within this budget. You can ask me how I know that. I've been in business development for 30 years in the private sector, in financial services, and latterly in recruitment. What we have here is basically someone not covering their cost. In the private sector, a business development person, anyone worth their salt, would be generating 4 to 5 times their basic salary. Otherwise, they would be run out of the building in 3 to 6 months. And I'm not joking. I worked across this sector in 30 years. I would back myself to sell 4 to 5 times my salary in weddings out of a jewel in the crown venue that we have in Burnley with no experience. With no experience, Mr. Mayor. The job description itself does somewhat give it away. Business development officer. That is an income generating role. Why could we not have some ambition and hire the best business development officer to sell one of the best locations in the whole of Lancashire? Why could they not be generating £250,000 a year? Why not £350,000 a year? Why is that not possible? Why is that not possible? It is over and above all of the other venues that we have in Burnley, but also Lancashire. We should be much more ambitious than that. And that is focusing, Mr. Mayor, on one specific item, not even touching on the other carefully costed items that Councillor McGowan mentioned and have also been validated by the Director of Resources. So I think if we're saying we're being ultra cautious, I go the other way. We're being very under-ambitious. We need to be reaching for the stars here. And that will then give us the money that we need to reduce council tax by 1% and give back to our residents who are sick and tired, Mr. Mayor, of having constant council tax increases year after year after year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gemma Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we all understand the pressures on is key, but a 1% reduction on Burnley Council share in context is 8 pence a week on a Band D property. And in exchange for that 8 pence a week, it defers 150,000 in repairs. It assumes what I think is risky income generation on an unproven role, but perhaps Councillor Steele should apply for it, because if you listen to him talk, perhaps he could sell ice to the Eskimos. But I do think that this just relies on uncertain efficiencies. We'd all love to pay less council tax. I'd love to pay less council tax, but I think this is far too fragile a funding model for what is effectively a symbolic tax reduction. 8 pence a week is not going to be felt in the pockets of Burnley residents, not when the rest has gone up by so much. And what we're still going to hear is Burnley Council has put my tax up, because the bill that they get still has Burnley Council on the top of it and the price still goes up. So for 8 pence a week, I do think that it risks other services suffering if those efficiencies fail. And I don't personally think I can support that.
Another member, Councillor Lorna. Sorry, Councillor Lorna.
Thank you. I'm glad you like my idea about Townley Hall, about the business development. It's a long time coming, probably 20 years. Anyway, I think it's a lot of pressure to put that one individual under to make sure that council tax will sort itself out, because they'll make a lot of money. Just listen to me. If you're going to put weddings on, you're not really going to be able to sort that out in the first year. You've got to tout, and people don't just get married like that. And secondly, we've had a festival at Townley Hall that has failed each time it's ever been there. So there's a lot of groundwork to do, but I do agree that in time, this role will transform the town and the culture in the town. So I'm very excited about it. But please, let's not put the whole pressure of that one role making money for the whole town and reducing council tax to zero. Thank you.
Councillor Gordon Lishman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you and colleagues will know, I do tend in these debates to work out the percentage that the argument is about. And today, as usual, it's about a very small percentage of the budget. It's therefore worth making entirely clear to residents that all the members of this council appear to be agreed on something of the order of 98.8% of the total budget being put forward. And when we actually agree on that, it does seem to be a little odd that we spend all our time at this event arguing about very small details. It does seem to me, I aimed this at the Conservative group, the Labour group, I was thinking they would be included but until earlier developments, but it feels to me a bit like a political party saying, hello, I'm still here, as a way of getting away from the extent of the agreement that there is amongst all members here. It is, of course, traditional that Conservatives in this chamber and other chambers stand up and argue for less tax. Some of us, and traditionally at least the Labour Party, have believed in the importance of providing a high quality of service to people who need it. And the fact, much missed in contemporary political debate, is that better services cost money. And if you want to have better services, if you even want to maintain the level of current services, that costs you money. The logic of Councillor McGowan's argument, though, seems to me to be a good one. All we need to do is persuade all our suppliers and all our staff that they don't need to have inflationary increases in the price we pay for them. And as soon as you can get that freeze operating on all our suppliers and all our staff, breaking out, of course, of national agreements on those matters, then it will be easy to save the money. There would, of course, then be problems in attracting the right staff and being able to afford the level of service that we need. And that's the choice that we have. When you talk about continually increasing taxes, the government actually works out the increase that is necessary in order to be able to maintain services. And that's the basis on which the national settlement is based. Councillor Steele, however, inspires me to emulation as someone responsible for the oversight of a rather large and prestigious wedding venue. I think the Conservative group, surprisingly, given their experience, seems to be confusing business development with direct sales. If I want somebody to do a sales job, I recruit a salesperson who will spend their time on the phone selling something. Business development is how you build a business for the longer term. Let's just take the example of weddings, which I've had some recent experience in terms of costing. In order to get a significant number of weddings in a venue, you actually have to invest and you have to support the provision of that service. Townley Hall is not actually an ideal wedding venue when you look at the things which people need and want as part of that. Actually, if you reduce the amount available for maintenance and repairs, you make it even less likely that somewhere is worthwhile to go to as a wedding venue. And if you do that over several years, you get to the point where the service you're trying to sell, in this case weddings, becomes actually less acceptable and less attractive to the people that you want to sell it to. Business development is about how you construct a business case in the medium and longer term to maximise your total income over time. It's not, and I can see reflections of the recent Conservative Party in this, it's not just about trying to get a bit quick profit from everything in sight. That family jewels approach to budget management is not one that has a particularly good reputation or track record in what we do. Therefore, Mr. Mayor, it does seem to me that the Council is proposing a prudent approach to business development in relation to this, and that if that can exceed the target that's been set for it, so much the better. I would not, however, like to be in the position of a salesperson faced with a demand to make a profit of, say, £300,000, meaning a wedding every week with a net profit of £6,000. That doesn't seem to me to be likely. What does seem not likely is that if you invest and develop the business and provide the facilities that people need, you will have a long-term asset which pays back a significant sum over time to the borough. And I would therefore support the proposal as it is and oppose the Conservative amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Leishman. Councillor Alan Hosker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I go to the point first on Councillor Ishman's point about the budget. I'm disappointed because in your budget you don't mention anything about Acton, and I'm basing that on the fact some of the parks in Acton that little kids have had no money spent on them for years. Be a disgrace, actually. I thought that might have been looked into a bit better, but it hasn't been. It's been missed off. It's been missed off, Councillor Richmond, so I'm disappointed in it. I'm happy to hear but you putting your fly tipping charges up. Let's face it, it doesn't matter what you charge them, you're too soft on enforcing the policies. I've worked with fly tipping issues. You're too soft and you're not taking enough enforcement action against people. You're getting a bit lackadaisical. In other councils, and I say this in boroughs around, be it Liberal Valley, Hackrington, they're going to be enforced if you act on it. Our council's too soft, and I put that on record publicly. Now, if you want to challenge that, that's fine, but I can tell you I've dug into it. If we're going to put them up, Councillor Richmond, I'm just saying, let's enforce it. Let's take action right now. Because it's a continuing thing, and maybe if we put, put a stop on it, it won't keep happening. Dog farming issues, I'm happy with that. I'm going to go on to what Councillor McGowan says. Councillor McGowan doesn't miss a trick. As you all know in here, he's one of the best chairs for scrutiny this council had in a long time. And I can tell you, having worked with Councillor McGowan, he doesn't miss a trick. If he tells you he's looked into that budget, he's looked into it. And he will dug into it. And he's realistic. And if anything, people that work with Councillor McGowan, he's also fair. And he'll speak it as he sees it. And I'm confident that he will scrutinise. I've looked at the budget myself, and I can see his points he's making. And that's all I'll say on it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hosker. Councillor Anwer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to pick up on a couple of points. I think, first of all, I'll just address a couple of the points that had been raised by Councillor Hosker with regards to the fly tipping. And that is why in the budget, I think Councillor Lishman mentioned that there will be additional staff and additional resource going into that to tackle the issue around fly tipping. With regards to the playgrounds, all of our playgrounds are part of the play strategy where they will they're on a cycle of refurbishment as they go along. So that's included as part of that. And then you mentioned about, obviously, Councillor McGowan, you've got your own fan club there, Councillor McGowan. And I don't know how many other members he's got in there, but he's shouting proudly about you. But I just wanted to say, just on the I understand where Councillor McGowan is coming from with the freeze on the council tax and actually giving back. But I raised my hand before Councillor Gordon Lishman spoke, and I think he hit the nail on the head. What we're focusing on here is, as opposed to the 90% or 98% of absolutely everything that's fantastic about this budget, we're focusing on the 2%. And I think one of the red herrings that we've seen as part of the conversation that we've had, and it's been fantastic to see Councillor Steele, get up and get so passionate, you'd think there was an election coming. But I think the red herring here is that there's we're focusing on weddings. Townley Hall is not just a wedding venue. We're talking about developing it as a whole business right across the board. And anybody who's worked in private and public sector will know that when you're putting together a strategy, long-term, medium-term, there's a big difference between the way you deal with things in the private sector than you would in the public sector. And I saw Councillor Steele nodding when he said that he might well apply for that job. Just make sure you declare an interest. There's members here who would love to chase up on people's interest. But I think what we're doing is, I think we need to move towards the vote. I understand the sentiment, but in effect, and I think Councillor Haig did the maths for me, was that it works out, even if you did a minus 1%, it's 8 pence a week you're giving back to residents. Do we want to give back 8 pence a week to our residents, or actually deliver all the things that are in that budget? And that's the key question for us. So I understand the sentiment, but actually, in fact, will not be supporting that amendment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Don Whittaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members. First of all, a great debate so far. That's what I want to say on this. I'd like to congratulate yourselves on the budget that you've put forward also. The very passionate statement of Councillor Mike Steele. What I would like to say on this is I would hope that members would take this opportunity to actually give the people of Burnley a little break this time round, and hopefully vote for this sound financial amendment. On top of that, it's great Enough to actually be up there last week with some of my students. And we thoroughly enjoyed the golf facilities up there. But I must admit, the pitches were very well used, but they do need refurbishing. And I agree with that completely. I am especially thankful for the increase in street scene with the enforcement officer. I've actually had the opportunity to go out with the senior enforcement officer recently. I found it to be very proactive, especially regarding dog fouling. So that is something that has affected every single one of us here in this chamber. We've all had those telephone calls, we've all had those emails, those WhatsApps, those text messages, and it's something that we do desperately need to do. I would, however, also like to say that thank you so much for putting some investment in the bowling green facilities that we have, in the 10 bowling greens that we've got. But in my particular ward, and Councillor Ashworth's and Councillor Steele's ward, we've also got a number of other sporting facilities there that I would like to see some investment in. We've got Ironhill Park, a fantastic friends group there that maintain that. We've got the bowling greens, fantastic. The tennis courts there, we've obviously had those refurbished. We've got the basketball courts that I managed to get some money from the council from last year to get those refurbished. But there's a big plot of land next to it that will quite benefit from some cycling facilities there. And I would ask that we could possibly consider that also, using some of the capital revenue that we've got available, if that would be possible. Or some of the expenditure that could possibly be put there. The residents of Whitfield and Ironhill deserve it. It's a lovely area, as are all of our wards, but it is centred on that particular area, and it would not just benefit Whitfield and Ironhill, it would also benefit the Ganner area as well. Thank you very much, Mr Mayor, members.
Councillor Whittaker. Councillor Neil Mottershead. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just obviously on the amendment, just to lay out my position. The bottom line with all council tax proposals, either freezing or trying to reduce, is that it's sustainable, not just for 1 year, but in the long term. And what this proposal does, okay, it outlines what happens in 26, 27, but beyond that, it doesn't have a plan. Therefore, it's unsustainable, I think, in anybody's view, especially with the ceiling of what you can do with council tax going forward. You can never catch that money back up. You know, looking at the details, and I get Councillor Steele's passion, but it's a massive if to actually raise, the assumption that £100,000 every year will be generated is a massive if. He hasn't come forward with a business case. He hasn't come forward with what the proposals might be of how you would actually deliver that. And Councillor Lishman has actually pointed out some of the pitfalls of Townley and the complexity of that site in terms of how we do actually raise money. So it is about being viable for the long term. And what I'm also uncomfortable about is this just deferring of the maintenance and support budget. We now have a really good person in charge of our property portfolio who's done some detailed work about the £300,000 a year we need for the next 3 years to actually maintain our estate in the standard that it needs to be. And for years and years, we took the easy option of skirting around increasing those budgets or even cutting them during the austerity years. And it would be a mistake to carry on. So you're deferring 150,000 this year, but you'd have to defer 150,000 again the year after, and the year after, and the year after, in order to sustain a council tax increase. The basic maths tells us that, so we won't be supporting this. The last time we saw a Conservative administration in Lancashire propose a cut in council tax is probably around, I think, 2013, when Jeff Driver was in charge of the county council. And just before he was going to the polls, he put a 2% reduction into the council tax. and it turned into a massive disaster that took years to recover from, basically putting social care into crisis. I know that's not part of our portfolio, but that's the kind of thing that can happen if you don't think these things through. So we will be opposing this, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Gordon Birtwistle.
And we're putting 8%, 8 pence per week on that. The Bandy property at Lancashire County Council is £1,201%, £2,101. The Reform Party promised at the last elections there will be no council tax increase at Lancashire County Council. They're increasing that by 3.8%, which works out at about £46 per year. That's far more than 8 pence per week. So when the council tax bills are sent around Burnley, people should realise that the vast majority of the money that is collected by Burnley Council is spent by Lancashire County Council. And the headlines in the paper today is that by increasing by this amount of money, they are going to be super efficient. I bring everybody's notice to the shambles outside, the shambles in the potholes, and the shambles of transport around Burnley that is managed by the efficiencies of Lancashire County Council. If that's what we are getting from Lancashire County Council for an increase of 3.8% or £45 on the Bandy Council tax, but far more on mine because I'm bigger than it. My cost is more than that. And I welcome the fact that the people of Burnley are only contributing 8 pence per week for the services that we offer, like the sports facilities at Townley, the sports facilities across the town, and the things that Burnley Council provide for an extra 8 pence a week, rather than £46 a year for the services presently being offered by Lancashire County Council. I'm very pleased to support the suggestions put forward by Councillor Margaret Lishman. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Gordon Birtwistle. Councillor Jim McGowan, you have a right to reply as a mover of the amendment.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have appreciated listening to everybody's points of view on council tax and the proposal I'm putting forward to reduce it for residents, for all residents. But I just don't think you're getting what I'm saying, because we talk about 8p or whatever you talk, £7 this. I'm not talking about nominal figures. I'm talking about the culture that has grown up around government and politics in general, that it's just squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. And I think Burnley could have taken a real opportunity to be an outlier in that and set an example and provide a little bit of leadership. As for some of the points that have been raised, though, I just want to touch on it so that it's clear to everybody. The Townley Hall point that I was making about a business development officer, maybe Councillor Lishman has worked in the charitable sector for too long to not know that the business development within the private sector is a sales role, and that's the bottom line about that. But I will say this on that: I am not saying anything more than that job. If the exec are confident in paying £52,000 for a new role, then the exec should also be confident that that new role in a sales role should cover its own costs. That's all I'm saying. It's not the 300,000 that Councillor Steele was talking as an example. The actual proposal itself that we're putting forward is for it to break even, which I think is quite realistic. Then, in terms of Councillor Anwar's question, do I want to give 8p back? Yes, I want to give some money back. We take a difference of opinion on that, but that's fine. I do appreciate Councillor Oscar agreeing and saying and the complimentary things he said about me, but ultimately, the principle of this is where I'm coming from. The principle of this council has the money to protect core services. Core services stay how they are. And also, all the new items the executive want to bring are all put in, and we can still reduce council tax by 1%. Councillor Townsend says that it's not possible in future years, but are we forgetting that the Labour government is closing Burnley down and merging the councils from next year? Or are we saying that that potentially is not happening? Because I'm working on the assumption of what is being told to us as a council. That's what's being told, and therefore this is the last significant budget this council is going to make. And I had the sneaking suspicion that this budget amendment wasn't going to be supported, let's be honest about it. But I nevertheless did the time, put the work in, went through it line by line and found a way which is sustainable. It is approved by the Section 151 officer of reducing council tax for residents. I will stand on that. We have a difference of opinion, but I will always be respectful to every single one of you in here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McGowan. Councillor Margaret Lishman, you have a right of reply as the mover of the original motion.
I think, Mr. Mayor, I made a lot of the comments that I would make in my initial speech regarding why we hadn't considered looking at the no council tax. I would say, though, that I find it fascinating that the aim of a business development officer is to have weddings full stop at Townley. That's not entirely how I envisage that role. What I particularly want is a business development individual who will look at making Townley accessible to our residents and to visitors from elsewhere. My personal thing that I'd like to see is a scheme of afternoon teas on a Sunday afternoon in the Red Room, for which I think we would have coach parties in droves, as they do in other parts of the country for similar initiatives. But that's just one way. There are lots of other things. And I'm not necessarily looking for a sales post. I am looking for a post that makes the jewel in the crown more accessible to all our residents, because that's, for me, the most important thing. I will not be supporting this motion, this amendment, I should say. We've made the point so many times about managing it 1 year, but creating a potential greater debt for our residents in years to come. We have a responsibility to remember that. And quite honestly, looking at something like the repairs budget and cutting that when it's taken years to actually get to a stage where we've got a proper repairs budget and we've started looking after our buildings, it's just not a viable option for us on this executive. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lishman. We will now go to the recording vote on the Conservative Group amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to read out members' names. This is a name vote on the amendment from the Conservative Group, namely Councillor Jamie McGowan. Please can members indicate whether they are for the amendment, against the amendment, or whether or not they are deciding to abstain. Councillor Shiraz Ahmed. Yes. So, for or against the amendment. Councillor Rangzeb Ali. Councillor Rasyab Anwar. Councillor Lee Ashworth. Councillor Howard Baker. Councillor Gail Barton. Councillor Gordon Birdwhistle. Councillor Helen Bridges. Councillor Charlie Briggs. Councillor Margaret Brindle. Councillor Joanne Broughton. Councillor Ashley Brown. Councillor Saeed Chowdhury. Councillor Barbara Dole. Councillor Ivory Emo. Councillor Gemma Haig. Councillor Alex Hall. Councillor John Harbour. Councillor Bill Horrocks. Against. Councillor Alan Hosker. Councillor Becky Hughes. Councillor Martin Hurt.
Against.
Councillor Shah Hussain. Councillor Jacqueline Inkle. Councillor Mohammed Ishtiaq. Councillor Nusrat Kazmi. Councillor Anne Kelly. Councillor Lubna Khan. Councillor Jack Lorna.
Against.
Councillor Alan Lewis.
Against.
Councillor Gordon Lishman. Councillor Gordon Lishman. It's not usual that you come before Maggie, that's why I'm getting confused. Councillor Margaret Lishman. Councillor Sherry Sloan. Councillor Jamie McGowan. Councillor Neil Motazed. Councillor Musharraf Parvez. Councillor Paul Reynolds.
Against.
Councillor Christine Solis. Councillor Sean Sproul. Councillor Mike Steele. That woke me up. Councillor Jeff Sumner. Councillor Mark Townsend. Councillor Don Whittaker. Thank you. The amendment is lost.
The amendment is lost. Members, is there anyone who wishes to speak on the original motion? Councillor Alan Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd just like to thank Councillor Lishman for accepting the Labour amendment that I was planning to put forward. But as I've already written some words, I might as well say something. So first of all, in the terms, I'm just sort of going to read through some of the things that obviously the Labour group has added into the budget, which I think really add to it, and I'm glad that it's been supported. Firstly, in terms of the boost to the Empty Homes programme, I'm sure many here are aware that residents across the borough are finding it difficult to find a decent, affordable home. Yet we have over 1,700 in the borough lying empty and unused. Whilst this is considerably fewer than the 3,232 that there were empty in 2009, it is still a considerable amount, and it is noted that since 2023, the number of empty homes has started to rise again. The budget hasn't kept pace with the rising costs of bringing these homes back into use. The budget, as now proposed, will mean an increase of more than 100 homes being brought back into use each year, thereby creating homes for families across Burnley and Padiham. Moving on to the Padiham residents in crisis part of our initial amendment. You may remember at the last full council meeting, I raised concerns with Councillor Lorna about the forthcoming closure of Padiham Food Bank. Padiham Food Bank has been supporting the most vulnerable residents in Padiham since 2019, and since 2022 has distributed more than 5,700 food parcels. I would like to thank all the volunteers for the amazing work they have done over the last 7 years. However, the loss of the food bank will sadly leave many Padiham residents without critical support. The budget, as amended, looks to provide the financial framework to establish a facility similar to Downtown in Padiham to provide a lifeline for Padiham residents. Lastly, in relation to the swimming amendment, I'm sure councillors will be aware of the difficulty of getting young people to take part in healthy, active lifestyles. I'm someone with a 14-year-old, and I find that difficulty, but quite a lot. Currently, the cost of 1 hour of swimming for one parent with 2 children costs £14.30. The same family would have to pay £56 per month for the 2 children to have swimming lessons. For many families, this makes swimming an unaffordable luxury rather than an activity with significant health benefits. So therefore, the budget will provide access for swimming for those families. I hope that everyone in the chamber can support the budget as it stands. And I think all of us, as Councillor McGowan alluded to earlier on, stood for election to make a difference in our towns and communities across the borough. And this budget allows us to make those differences. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Councillor Shah Hussain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I welcome this budget. Now we'll be voting for it. And I have sympathies with what Councillor McGowan was saying and his amendments. And you didn't come with a zero. I was hoping you'd come with a zero, but yeah, but it's 1%. I think the key thing for me is Lancashire County Council have increased the council tax by 3.8%. As Councillor Birtwistle said, it's over £42. And so regardless of whether we increase it or not, residents in Burnley would have got an increase in their council tax. But regardless of that, I welcome this because I see for that 8 pence extra, is it 8p extra?
Yeah.
For that 8p extra, I see Water Opportunities Fund. We had a wonderful opportunity, us three councillors in Dane's House, to support groups that would not necessarily have got money from anywhere else. And we see the benefit in that. And we welcome the stuff around enforcement and cleaning and making Burnley cleaner and taking pride in our town. And Bardon Track, we welcome the investment in Bardon Track. But what I want to see is that the community can use it. I know it's within, I don't think it's in Danes, I think it could be in Queensgate, but I'm not 100% sure. But residents aren't able to use that. Previously they were, but for the last 5-6 years, I've had residents talking to me not being able to use it. So if that investment is going into Bardon Track, I want it to be opened up to residents so they can use it and not for a private club. And in terms of empty house project, has been really successful. I think it was done about 10-15 years back, and it's brought a lot of properties that would not have necessarily been derelict and brought them into good use. It brought money into the council pot through reinvesting that profit, and I think it's done well for our in Burnley. I don't hardly see any kind of empty properties these days. So I think that is something that and you're putting in extra money, so I can see the benefit from it. 3G sports pitches, food banks, swimming lessons, all for an extra 8p. I think that's value for money, and I hope members support this budget. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hussain. Councillor Mark Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And first of all, I want to put on record my thanks to the Councillor Maggie Lishman and the wider executive for their collaborative and constructive approach in terms of their approach to this budget, in terms of discussing with opposition parties. And also I'd like to put my thanks on record for the officers who've supported me and others as we've gone through the last few weeks in understanding all the numbers that surround it. Secondly, in terms of the growth items that are in the budget, I think it's really quite exciting. For some of us who've been on the council for some time, we've been used to the growth list of the budget being empty and the savings element being a yard long as we went through austerity and all those things that were really difficult. But the focus on street scene activities and cleaning our streets, green spaces, is really welcome. Things that we've been discussing for quite some time, but have perhaps never been able to get to the point of getting them into place. So it's good news that there's such a focus on it this time in the budget. But as well as that, and it hasn't been mentioned yet, and I know perhaps it should have been, but at the last council meeting, we actually asked if the executive would look again at bereavement charges, and that has actually happened, and the executive were happy to accept that proposal that council voted for unanimously to actually freeze those bereavement charges. So we're thankful to that as well from the executive, as well as the Empty Homes Initiative, the Padiham Crisis Support, the swimming initiative, and the council tax support for the terminally ill, which I think is really important. When you look at the budget numbers for Burnley Council, it's only £7,000, but it's the total council tax bill for everybody, and basically it's a £50,000 budget that will be retained by families who have somebody who's terminally ill within their family. So that's really constructive. What I want to do, though, is just perhaps challenge a little bit, friendly almost, in terms of some of the aspects of it's always the government's fault in terms of what we can do. I think there's been a step change over these last 2 years, and we should recognise it, in going from austerity to a place where now we can actually see growth. And I think I just go back to the medium-term financial strategy from 12 months ago. In March last year, for the next 3 years, this council was forecasting a £2.4 million gap. That has now been reduced to 1.7 million. That's a 29% reduction in these last 12 months. So that's good news, not just for this year, but the next 2 years that this council has to go through. If you just go back to September, the council was predicting a £70,000 gap that still had to be closed in the budget when we got to tonight. We're not even talking about closing a gap. Basically, what we got is £1.4 million worth of growth in Appendix 2. But not only that, by the amendment that we've added tonight, we've added another £500,000 to that 1.4 million. It's now over 1.9 million. So in terms of where this council is, in terms of growth and expansion, it's in a place it hasn't been in since 2010, 16 years ago, 17 years ago, in terms of where we currently are. And whilst doing that, still being able to not increase the council tax by the full amount. Just think about that. So those are the 3 areas that I would focus on and say things aren't quite as bad as they used to be. I know things can always be better, but in terms of government support and government funding, it isn't as bad as what it was. And I would just say about the 650,000 that Councillor Lishman referred to about new burdens and the expectations, I will go back to the reports that the executive issued on this previously, and the 650,000 was always in the reports as to be confirmed. It was never a done deal, so we would have always liked it to be, but it was never quite there. So, and I will just finish by talking about the debt, because obviously I think you're referring to something I may have said. The debt will, over these next 3 years, for this council, go through the £100 million barrier. That's what the Treasury Management Strategy tells us, which is £2,300 for every household in this borough. I'm not saying that's a completely bad thing. Councillor Lishman was right. There's plenty of invest to save initiatives that have been done by this council. But what I would just say, and you may want to comment on this when you close the debate, the debt financing costs are interesting. In 2019-20, 12.1% of the net revenue budget was required to finance debt. By 27-28, that's only next year, the prediction in the Treasury Management Strategy is that that will have risen to 30%. That's an increase of 18%. And I think everybody around here would ask is that we have an assurance that that's affordable and sustainable going forward. And I just think that reassurance would give everybody that it is quite stark in the Treasury Management Strategy how high that debt financing costs are as a proportion of the net revenue budget. But we will be supporting, and we're just to finalise, Mr. Mayor, we're delighted with the cooperation and collaboration that we've had over these last few days in bringing this budget to council tonight. And we will be supporting Councillor Lishman's budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Councillor Gemma Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief, because I think Councillor Lewis stole most of my points, so I've had to scribble a lot out in the last few minutes. On empty homes, refurbishing and bringing those back into use, I know that I get a lot of emails about homes that are dragging streets down, so I'm really pleased to see family homes being brought back into use there. I'm really pleased to see the support for a Paddy and Food Bank has been sorted. I know that Councillor Lewis has been determined to make sure that Paddyhamers don't have to find the money to leave Paddyham when they're already in crisis and in need of emergency food. And he often tells me there's no need to leave Paddyham anyway. On swimming, that's an important life skill, and I'm really pleased that we're opening that up to more. My 7-year-old daughter loves her lessons at St. Peter's, so I'm pleased to support more children getting that opportunity. I am pleased to see the executive accepted the Labour amendment, and I will say it's lovely not to lose a vote in this place. And with those and the prior Labour amendments that Councillor Townsend mentioned, I'm almost enjoying myself tonight. But I am pleased with this year's budget, and once again, not raising council tax by the max amount. I think the measurements complement a budget residents will see real benefit from, and I am also really pleased to see collaboration and nobody shouting at each other tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Don Whittaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's some good stuff there, but at the end of the day, we've put forward our amendment, which unfortunately has been knocked back. I just want to say, well, thanks for raising all this, and to Councillor Townsend regarding the 2020 comments and austerity, etc. I just want to know, do you know something that I don't? We talk about growth, etc. We have had growth, most certainly. A growth in businesses closing, a growth in unemployment, a growth in people feeling completely disingenuated by our government. This was about Burnley Council, but I just want to bring that up. We have got growth in unemployment, loss of business, loss of trust in our law enforcement officers who are seem to be more concerned about following people on social media for hurty words. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Whittaker. Councillor Gordon Lishman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Briefly, I will say, in response to being heckled from in front of me, I wanted to pick up on one aspect of what Councillor Townsend has said. He referred to the period of austerity, which he and I will remember started in 2008. I remember talking to Alistair Darling about it at the time. One of the aspects, however, of the government generosity which he's talking about really needs to have more attention brought to it. I think it's unfair to compare our 1.99% increase with the County Council's 3.8% increase. That suggests only a small difference between the two. What it doesn't account for is the 27.5% increase in the County Council's resources from the government settlement, or the additional £200 million, which you'll not yet have noticed, being spent on potholes and roads in the county. It's not just the difference between 1.99, particularly in our case, facing a settlement which has been less than comparable authorities. It's comparing it with 3.8 plus a very generous overall settlement to the county, plus an extra £200 million that the government, in its generosity, as Councillor Townsend points out, has provided. I do notice, too, one of the other things about the County Council is that before the County Council elections last year, I saw a number of leaflets from the Reform Party pointing out the amount of money that was being spent on members' allowances. And that's currently members' allowances in the county at 14,000 a year. plus a significant amount for expenses. I know that the County Council has found it extremely difficult to find the savings it promised so promiscuously before the election. But you would have thought that one area to which they might have turned a little attention was the cost of their own allowances, the cost of their expenses, and the substantial cost of their newly refurbished restaurant in County Hall. And I think those things are worth everybody in this council chamber bearing in mind when we look at those comparative figures and we talk about how they are to be assessed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor, I'm going to bring in the last final speaker, Councillor Alan Hosker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yet again, the Lib Dems go on the attack on about reform. You know, you just can't resist it, can you? When you go on about reform and you go on about county council and you go on about the budget, there's a lot more people to pay for what we have here as a council. Social services, schools, etc. A lot more money. Do you not take that into account? Do you not have a calculator? Because they do spend all the time. And I'll say this to you now because I had all this with Conservatives when I was a Conservative county councillor. You were there again shooting your mouth off. Right? You know, hold on, you get this every year. It was same with Conservatives, right? And you were saying now with Reform. Reforms have got to pay out. They've got a lot of new people there. They're new to the job. Right? They're new to the job. And I know what it said in the leaflets. And sometimes we've seen things in your leaflets and you haven't been able to account on some of yours. What people say in leaflets, and sometimes it changes. And it changes. It's done with the Labour Party. And it's done with all parties. You know what I mean? You look at your Labour government now for a fine example. How many U-turns? And how many times have you put stuff in the leaflets and not accounted for it? It's shocking where things go, but you're having a go at Reform. But they're paying a lot more money out. And you understand that with social services and what have you. Get your points correct.
Oscar.
I would just mention there is a difference between talking about absolute cash amounts and talking about percentages, and what I said related to the second.
Councillor, have the final round of reply on the motion as the mover of the original motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to speak for very long. I thank Councillor Townsend for the comments that he made. I think towards the end there was a hint of rose-tinted glasses, because certainly without the pension fund money, I don't think we'd have been in quite the constructive position, and the help of Oliver Ryan to the tune of 700,000 this year. That 700,000, we don't know next year what position we will be in with that. So whilst this year we've got money and we can spend, I'm not sure where we'll be next year, and we will have to see. And I thank him also for mentioning the bereavement charges, which I forgot to do. So thank you. I think also regarding the debt that he raised, I think we are managing that. I think these are predicted figures, and we will be watching those carefully as we do each and every year. I think this is an extremely good budget. I think that it's taken a lot of effort to get it together, and a lot of my time talking to people, both officers and to councillors and to residents, about what is needed and what we need to do. And as I said in my speech, we did think very carefully about whether to not have a council tax rise at all this year. But we took the decision that there was much that needed to be done. And we got even more that needed to be done from our Labour colleagues. And we accept that, and I think this is an extremely good and robust budget that you have in front of you. And I beg to move, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lishman. We will go to the recorded vote on the original motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just for clarity, it's the original motion as altered and accepted by the Chamber. Please can members indicate whether or not they're for the motion, against the motion, or would wish to abstain. So we are voting for the substantive motion. Councillor Shiraz Ahmed. Councillor Aranziab Ali. Councillor Abbasiab Anwar. Councillor Lee Ashworth. Councillor Howard Baker. Councillor Gail Barton. Councillor Gordon Birtwistle. Councillor Helen Bridges. Councillor Charlie Briggs. Councillor Margaret Brindle. Councillor Joanne Broughton. Councillor Ashley Brown. Councillor Saeed Chowdhury. Councillor Barbara Dole. Councillor Ivory Emo. Councillor Gemma Hague. Councillor Alex Hall. Councillor John Harbour. Councillor Bill Horrocks. Councillor Alan Oscar. Councillor Becky Hughes. Councillor Martin Hurt. Councillor Shah Hussain. Councillor Jacqueline Inkle. Councillor Mohammed Ishtiaq. Thank you. Councillor Nusrat Kazmi. Councillor Anne Kelly. Councillor Lubna Khan. Councillor Jack Lorna. Councillor Alan Lewis. Councillor Gordon Lishman. Councillor Margaret Lishman. Councillor Sherry Sloan. Councillor Jamie McGowan. Councillor Neil Mottazed. Councillor Musharraf Parvez. Councillor Paul Reynolds, Mr Mayor.
Against? 4.
There's been a few slip-ups today, looks like. Councillor Christine Solis. Councillor Christine Solis. For, against, or abstain? Councillor Christine Solis. Thank you. Councillor Sean Sproul. Councillor Mike Steele. Councillor Jeff Sumner. Councillor Mark Townsend. Last but not least, Councillor Don Whittaker. Thank you. The motion is carried.
The motion is carried. Agenda item 5K, pay policy statement. Councillor Margaret Lishman, will you move the recommendations in the report?
Move the recommendations, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Anwar, will you second the recommendations?
I second recommendations, Mr Mayor.
Any member? All those in favour, please show. Thank you, that is carried. Agenda item 6, questions.
None have been received, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes the business for tonight's meeting.
Council, ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding.